everyone, to the OKD Working Group meeting for August 2nd of the year 2022. We've got a link to the agenda in the chat, and feel free to take maybe the next 30 seconds or so to take a look and make sure that you have everything in there that you want to talk about, or if you want to move something around, let us know. We want to be mindful of time constraints. If someone has to take off early and you have an item, we can kind of shift it around. Let's see. I think we have everyone here that's so far has an agenda item on. So take a few seconds and let me know if there's anything you need to change.
While you're here, I can see John Fortin's online. Did you want to talk about the PROW project that you've been working on?
Yeah, I can talk about that for a couple minutes.
Yeah. So
let's put that under the OKD CI/CD updates. So we'll say PROW. And then, oops.
I should put that somewhere I can see it.
All right. I think we're good to go then. So let's start out with OKD release updates with Vadim and/or Christian. So take it away.
Thank you, Jamie. I don't see Vadim here today, so I'll take it away. We have a new release, actually our first 4.11 release, and we are actually we haven't released the product yet. So there is one remaining issue that's blocking OCP 4.11 from getting released, which is an issue with OVN under high load. So you might want to hold from upgrading to that. Other than that, I think that only happens with really high load using OVN, which is the default in OKD. So beware of that, but otherwise, I haven't seen any big issues. It was only cut 3 days ago, so I haven't followed up too much, but there is the first 4.11 release out today, 3 days ago. That's that. Please report any issues on the discussions in the repository. That's really, I don't have anything really other than that announcement.
Okay, any questions or feedback for Christian on that particular area there on releases?
Yeah, Christian, it shows as failing from the July 9th version, except I think
on our
AWS. On the website
release page.
The release page, yeah.
I need to go and look at the.
Oh, and Bruce, could you put the link to the releases? If you're in front of the releases page, could you drop that in the chat so other folks can follow along in their book there?
Okay, it's
in the minutes
on my pad. So.
Oh, is it in the minutes?
It should be the one.
Yeah.
No, he means I think he's looking for the releases with the right. Yeah. Okay, there we
go. Yeah, I think it should be the one I put in the chat.
Yeah.
There's a couple of.
Well, no, the one.
Oh, sorry.
If you go to releases from that one, let's see. No, how the heck do we get there? Okay, let's. Just I'll put in one way or the other.
It had one success, and so it got success and then 3 failures, so it succeeded once.
Right, on AWS, but it failed on vSphere.
Yeah, we currently only have AWS, I think, as blocking as required. Since I'm not currently involved with cutting the releases, I can't tell you too much about it. I'll circle back with Vadim, and yeah, maybe we'll upgrade all of those platforms to blocking in the future. And certainly once we have a rework of the whole build pipeline in the works, so when that lands, we will definitely have more testing and require more testing before release. For now, I think, yeah, I would kind of take this first release with caution, since there is one known bug now still there. Anyways, hopefully by our next meeting in 2 weeks, we'll have a version, a 4.11 version that works on all these platforms.
Well,
Mike, do you want to?
I guess the only thing is that there should be, when you upgrade to 11, it would be nice if the upgrade worked from the most recent 10 version. Because everybody might have updated to that.
Absolutely, that's what I was talking about. I think we only require upgradability on AWS currently, and all the other ones are running but aren't blocking. So the failures you see here wouldn't actually stop the release process, and that's something we should probably change in our release procedure to make those platforms blocking too. Unfortunately, I can't change anything about that right now, but we'll try to make sure that for the next release we have upgradability from the last 4.10 definitely on all the platforms.
Excellent. Thank you, Christian.
Actually,
And,
let me note that in the notes as an action item for me.
Cool. And then we had a great comment in the chat.
Whenever we go through these things, I'm always thinking back to like what we've been talking about as like themes for OKD and whatnot. And one of the big themes that I always see is like, how do we help our community become more involved in these things? And so when Bruce was kind of pointing this out, immediately my mind went to like, okay, how could we share this with the community? And it just, I'm trying to think of like content we can create. And so I was thinking like, it would be really cool to do a video. And this is something like, I'm sure I could do, or Christian can do, or maybe you already have something like this, where we could like take a release and show these failures coming out and start the video that way, and then say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I want to show you how I go from this screen and how I drill down into where the failure was, what the test was that failed, and where the actual breakdown happened, right? And I wouldn't know ahead of time what it was going to do, right? So when we got there, maybe we would find a flake, maybe we would find an actual bug, but we could talk about these themes on the way kind of down the journey with the hope of explaining, like, this is what I go through on a daily basis when I look at these things, because this looks very familiar to me, but it probably looks very unfamiliar to people in the community. And so I think if we can do more of this teaching to fish, I know there are people in the community who are curious and they see these failures, and maybe they would go chase something down and say, oh yeah, I figured out where this test, there's a bug in the test, or there's a bug in the actual code. So I'm just always trying to think about some of the themes we're talking about. And like, this is one of those things we could make like a 45-minute video. And I know, Bruce, like, video is not the perfect way to cover these things, but it's just my thought, because it's something I can like turn on and just do, like, talk while I'm doing it or whatever. And then maybe later we transpose it into some text to go with it or something. But anyways, that's just what I thought while y'all were talking.
Well, Mike, while you were talking, I was thinking, if you want to take this example that we have today, I have time this week. You want to walk through it and do that. If you're the right person to record that and use Blue Jeans to do it, I'm happy if you want to book an hour with me on, I don't know, Thursday. What's today? Today's Tuesday.
I have bad news for you, Diane. I'm going out on PTO tomorrow. I won't be back till next Tuesday, but maybe next week or something.
All right. Well, pick a release and do one, and just book an hour, and I will come on and record it, and then we could just edit it and put it up there. I'm game for that.
This is fantastic, because this actually syncs up with the discussion before about creating sort of a intro to OKD video that sort of explains things. And I think, I agree, a video is, it's not ideal, but it's something that people can put on and just sort of sit and watch or have in the background or whatever. And it's a passive way to sort of soak in stuff about OKD that we want to know about.
Yeah, and the other thing.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
So I was just going to say, the other thing is that it does then allow somebody who may not have the technical expertise to then go and transcribe and write that up in documentation.
Yeah.
So, like, my main thought here is that, like, this style, I think this style of content could work really well for what we're doing, and what I'm kind of referring to are these ride-alongs, right? Where it's like, I'm doing this stuff all day long anyways, right? But if I could somehow set aside an hour or something to do a specific task with the expectation of making some sort of content out of it, these ride-along videos then will help others, because it's like this is the kind of day-to-day activities that we're doing, maintaining OpenShift as it is now. But as we start to transition into this OKD ownership, maintainership, it would be great to be able to say, okay, well, this might be something that will become part of your daily activities as well.
Fantastic.
That sounds really good. We shouldn't allow the ideal to be the enemy of the good, right?
Yes.
Yep. And Mike, if we do one, right along, I will just hit the record button and let that. But if you wanted to invite Bruce along here,
That would be cool.
he could ask questions of you because he might not know. You might assume things that he might not know. So,
Totally.
I
Yeah,
like
for sure.
The ride along theme. So now we've diverged from there, but let's place a bookmark. And I know school's full out, Bruce, for you. Time is now.
Yeah, we start Labor Day.
Excellent. Well, then let's put that as a task for the 2 or 3 of you to take care of in the next couple of weeks. And then maybe you can report back by the next main meeting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to...
Hold on, Jamie, before we move on, there was another comment in the chat about OKD 411 documentation. I'm guessing that gets synced up when OCP goes 411. They do a general update on the doc site. So we may have to wait until 411 gets released on OCP before we see the 411.
One thing I would say is for those of us that are familiar with OKD and are varying levels of familiarity with the innards, look for stuff in the documentation as the 411 becomes available that may not be applicable, so that we can get stuff submitted for Michael to get it pulled out. Like, we're still finding stuff. Someone found something like a week ago that was the tuning operator, I think it is, that provides the fine tuning for CPU and stuff like that. That's not applicable for OKD. That's something that we should have spotted, but it just never came up, right? So we're always finding stuff that needs to get pulled out of the documentation that gets synced down. All right, moving on now to OKD CI/CD updates with Christian and John and anyone else that has stuff to contribute. So, Christian.
All right, I think we have some pretty awesome updates here. We have internally started on creating, as we've talked about earlier, another version of OKD based on CentOS Stream CoreOS. As part of this work, we are building out Tecton pipelines to essentially do everything. So we have a Tecton pipeline that is kind of outside of the pure SCOS Stream CoreOS effort that is in the OKD project, the pipelines repository, which is kind of an agnostic pipeline to build optional operators. For that, we have provided a base image that you can use that is also CentOS based, and that can essentially be used to build and to ship those operators in the operator hub format. Eventually, we want to include you, the community, in the list of administrators for essentially a namespace on a cluster that we get to use. Currently, we are in talks with the Operate First cloud to get those resources. We've actually created a group there already. A couple of you, Jamie, Brian, I've included you in that list. If you are interested in also getting access to that cluster, where we'll essentially have the ability to deploy that pipeline, but also to really experiment with things. As long as you don't do anything cheeky there, everything should be fine. You should really be able to do things yourself. We want to really allow that and facilitate that. So if you're interested in helping build optional operators, please reach out if you're not on the list already, and I will see to it that you get admin access on that namespace on operate first as well. So we'll be building out that Tecton pipeline for optional operators. That's one of the efforts. Then more currently focused on the SCOS effort is building a Tecton pipeline to build SCOS itself, which is also kind of agnostic if you see it as a CoreOS assembler pipeline in Tecton. And that's another repository we've just created in the OKD project, which is the COSA pipeline. We'll be pushing the CoreOS assembler pipeline, the actual code there very soon. And with that, you do need the KVM device exposed to the pod, so you need that running with privileges on the cluster. That is something we're currently working out how to deploy to operate first, so we can then leverage that pipeline there. For our SCOS development, we will have an internal OKD namespace, but you will, as the community, you will be free to deploy that pipeline to the OKD Working Group namespace as well to build your own things if you like. Since it's kind of an agnostic CoreOS assembler pipeline, you really just need RPMs as inputs, and then you'll get the boot images and the OS tree in various formats as output of that pipeline. So that is very cool. And then we have a third effort in the making, which is a third repository in that OKD project organization on GitHub, which is, I think it's called something SCOS 9 Rebuild. And that is essentially, that is kind of the most experimental thing. Vadim has set it up, and I think Alessandro from our multi-arch team is also looking at it. And that is something we want to use as a replacement for the release controller we currently run in our PROW CI environment. So that would allow us to build a release payload without PROW. That's essentially the part bundling all the things together, the container images for the cluster side, as well as the container that includes the OS tree, as well as references to the boot images, in order to create a payload from that. So really, that would allow us to run all of, essentially building all of OpenShift without PROW within Tecton. And I think that is really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to it. So internally, we are focusing on getting SCOS built, and we'll be doing that on Operate first, at least until the end of the year, building both the boot images on Operate first and possibly also the payloads. We might do that in PROW. It just depends on what's easier, really, in the end. I think our developers internally would love to use Tecton for these things. So there's a good chance that we actually do the payload creation with Tecton as well eventually. Yeah, so I did see, and that's why I put it on the agenda, I did see that discussion 1288 that Brian opened, and because there's also a link to the OKD project, I wanted to kind of reiterate that here, that yeah, now that we have, or will soon have, resources at our hands, we should definitely start organizing ourselves as a group a bit more, possibly with a Kanban project on the GitHub project, on the OKD project org, or in any other manner, really. But I'm all for tracking our tasks and organizing ourselves. I think that's it from me. Thank you.
All right, any questions or feedback for Christian on anything that he referenced there in terms of getting things built with CI/CD?
Pretty exciting.
And I'm laughing because Christian's talking about moving away from PROW. John, you're up next with talking about PROW.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm always a day late and a dollar short. But I have a feeling that PROW's not going to be going away anytime real soon, because they got all that other stuff that's built into it. And so give a little bit of background. I mean, we've talked for a long time about how we have not really had the ability to do building on our own and push, our own source changes and stuff like that because, that OpenShift repository is rightfully owned, by all the Red Hat folks. So finally, I guess almost 3 weeks ago or whatever, I finally said, you know what? I'm just really curious how all of this works. I ran into a couple of documents that kind of piqued my interest a little bit. And I started to really, over the last 2 weeks, deep dive into Prow and into how CI operator works and how a lot of these jobs are being kicked off with, changes being made to the repositories and stuff like that. And although it doesn't show it right now, those links, I have a Prow that works probably 85% right now. I can do like OC, I was able to build it and push new images and stuff like that. What I can't do yet is build OKD yet because of the whole release controller, and also trying to figure out how to configure my cluster the first time with all the different configuration files has been a challenge because the automated way of doing it can't handle a huge amount of changes all at once. So there's all these config maps that have to be created that are created from all the job specs and the CI specs and stuff like that. And I'm still trying to figure out how to do that initial configuration, but I can do onesie twosies with no issue. So what this may allow us to do, one, it'll give us much more visibility into how we do testing. Do we want to do our own testing, create our new jobs that are outside of Red Hat, and also take advantage of all the stuff that Red Hat's already giving us? I mean, all of this is available, in the GitHub repositories, including the source for how to build these build images and stuff. 99% of them, we don't have to use RHEL. We can use UBI8 or whatever, and then they're perfectly fine. It's been fun, frustrating, annoying, and exciting at the same time because every time I get a little bit closer, there's like, oh, well, how do I do this now? And then you have to go through and dig through everything, and it's not well documented. I think the people who know it really well. And it's like, well, it's all, we already know how it works, so it just works. Yeah, I think in a couple of weeks, I'm hoping to have hoping to be able to build at least OKD 4.10, or come close to it. Then figuring out how do we pull in changes from, the OpenShift repository into, well, I'm calling it the OKD Experience repository and rebuild and stuff. But I'm doing it for my own benefit, just for my own knowledge. I'm hoping that it can be a benefit, as we go forward, with the new build process that Christian is talking about. Maybe there's some way that we can integrate things so that we can do automated builds based on, a push going into the repository or something. So maybe we figure out how to do a new job that goes to the, to the new build process as opposed to the current build process. So, but it gives us something that, well, I control right now, but ultimately, we may be able to control. Currently, it runs on my OpenShift cluster downstairs, or OKD cluster downstairs in my basement. So if this turns into something real, we'd have to find someplace else to conceivably put it. But yeah, that's it. And I put the 2 links. I mean, there's not a whole lot in either of them right now, but Prow's up and working.
That's really cool.
It's totally cool. Is it something, if we had AWS resources, you could put there and run?
Well, the only thing is right now, that's what's stopping me from testing. I can't do E2E testing because I don't have, the resources to do, a bunch of AWS builds. But we could also put this on AWS or, the actual cluster in AWS, or put it in Google, or I don't think we could do it. I just went right out of my head where we're putting the current stuff, because Prow really requires cluster admin access, and so does CI operator. So they probably aren't going to want to run Prow and stuff in.
So on Operate First, they actually run Prow already. So we might be able to integrate with their instance, or eventually we will. Right now, we'll just get namespaces on existing clusters, but eventually, once we have the SCOS version of OKD, the folks behind Operate First, which is our Office of the CTO, they're interested in spinning up an OKD cluster for us that we will then control and own fully.
That'd be a perfect spot for it. Then.
So yeah, that is a few months out still, but if until then we can deploy that into just a namespace, because they already have Prow on that cluster. So I'm not sure what exactly you need in terms of RBAC and so on, but we might be able to get that thing deployed on Operate First already, like by, let's say, next week, when we have all of our.
Well, I've got a lot more learnings to do to figure out how to automate some of these processes that are already automated within Red Hat. So.
Right. I do think it's very valuable that we tackle this from just different perspectives here, because eventually we will for the SCOS thing, we will probably do it internally in Prow with a release controller and this year operator for the new OKD on SCOS builds, but we will still, and that even more with the new Operate First infrastructure, we still want to do more experiments and custom builds. And
sure.
I think Elmico is very interested in that too. So we'll have that ability, and the more we try it, the more we learn the different ways that get us to a payload. I think, the better we're all off, and we all benefit from that. So it's really cool to hear that you got Prow deployed and that you got it 85% working. That's pretty amazing already. So I'm looking forward to seeing that and taking a look at what's happening there.
Hey, John, could you do a little 5-minute video walkthrough or something like that of what you have? I think that would be really educational for folks.
Once they get a little further along, the actual build of Prow itself is pretty easy. Once you have a cluster, it's the integration now of all the OpenShift release stuff. Because pretty much almost everything that's needed is in the OpenShift release repository on GitHub, and then that is where all the meat of the process. And I'm still fighting my way through parts of it. So,
is there any?
But yeah, ultimately, yes.
Anything you can parcel off or you need help with from the rest of the community that or is it still pretty much an individual act of valor?
Yeah, right now it is. I mean, I pinged Vadim. I haven't had to ping Christian yet, but I've come close a couple of times. But I've been able to work through it. As soon as I have enough knowledge to share that's beyond the basics right now, I'll be happy to.
Okay, and as I said with Mike, I would be happy to record that with you and ask silly questions that will move us forward a little bit, and then get that available. So when you're ready, just let me know, and I'm getting back into the video creation mode here. So as you might.
I mean, as long as the rest of the community thinks that this is a worthwhile thing, I'm more than willing to share it. I mean, it started off as just a project for my knowledge, but like I said, I'm more than willing to share it. And I hope you all don't mind that I use OKD in my repository name.
Not at all. Not at all. The more
So, John, I got a couple thoughts, just of feedback here, and first I'll echo what Shri and Christian are saying. 100% worthwhile. It's awesome to hear you made it so far. So first thought about tests that we should probably cover, or if you're looking for a target, there is a series of tests that originate in Kubernetes that are kind of the base conformance tests. We also run those on OpenShift Container Platform. That's probably a really safe place to start in terms of an initial payload, is those basic conformance tests and whatnot. Just because we'd have coverage with OpenShift and with upstream. Then the second thought about the mirrored repositories that you have from other locations. we have a few bots that we use internally to sync from Kubernetes repos to OpenShift repos. We could totally share those and repurpose them and figure out if there's a way we could use them in OKD too.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, and they can run off GitHub Actions, or they could run off of Prow. Like, there's a lot of different ways to trigger them. And then the last thought, and this might be something that would be useful for OKD in the future here, is that we're currently developing, and it's open source right now, so you could get it. We're developing a certification tool for OpenShift, and this is something that you could run on like an OpenShift you've deployed to determine if like it meets Red Hat's conformance and whatnot. And this tool is open source and everything, and it bundles some of the conformance tests from upstream. So there's the idea that once this, and I think it's getting released this week or next week, this is a tool that we could actually use outside of Prow if we wanted to. Once we deploy an OKD cluster, you could run this certification tool to see if it passes, like, is this cluster configured in the proper way? And it would give you a report of like all the tests that ran on it and everything. And, you know, I can share more about that if people are interested. But anyways, those are just the thoughts I had. Awesome to hear what you're doing.
Yeah, but like I said, I was able to get machine config operator to go. I was able to get CO to work. I think there's one that I'm not sure about, OKD Machine OS. I think that one has an issue because of the requirement for KVM, but I think we shipped that out for build, so I haven't really played with that yet. So anyway, that's my update and my plaything for the moment.
That's fantastic. All right, let's move on now to FCOS updates, and we appreciate your patience, Timothy, while we went through that. I probably should have put you earlier in the agenda.
All good, all good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Yes, all good, and it's kind of related. So right now, like if we're talking of pure Fedora core exchanges, there aren't that much of interest for this week. We are looking already at Fedora 37 changes, which is the upcoming release, which is there in a couple of months for the Fedora core side, but it's probably not going to land right now in OKD in a release, so it's a little bit for the future. Apart from that, we have the usual bug fix and changes, but nothing major that I could see. We are changing, oh yes, there's one thing. We are changing the compression for the init from FS to ZSTD. So that might impact you if you're doing that for Pixie boot, but I don't think OKD does that much Pixie boot, so that should probably be transparent for OKD folks. And yes, apart from that, most of my time has been working on SCOS changes, so making sure that XOS actually works and builds, and that we have all the packages available for you directly in the open, so cryo and things like that. So that's what I've been doing most of my time right now.
Cool. Any questions or comments for Timothy?
Timothy, since I have you here, earlier the question came up where the CentOS Stream RPM repositories live, because we are now rebuilding SCOS. We'll meet about that tomorrow. But if you have a link to those repository, the Yum repos, and could share those if you have it at hand, that would be awesome. Otherwise, I think it can also wait till tomorrow.
Yeah, so let's keep some context around that. So the main thing for building CentOS Stream for us, like 95%, if it's not more, of the packages are just directly pulled from the CentOS Stream repo. So like the CentOS Stream repo that already exists, that are part of the CentOS Stream project upstream. Then there's like a couple of packages that we need on the side, which is essentially cryo, OpenShift, OC, and the kubelet itself. So among those packages, like OpenShift is already no OpenShift, Open vSwitch is already part of a special interest group in the CentOS project. So they have their own SIG and they publish their own packages there. So we use that. And then we've got a couple of missing packages. So Kupplet, Cryo, OC, and Zeus right now are just not available anywhere because we're setting this up. So they are not ready yet, but I've been talking with the folks in me doing the work on those to try and set up something to have them available publicly. So right now, it's likely that we're going to reuse a Fedora Copper project to host them. And as soon as they are available, they will be used by the CentOS stream manifest. So we've
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, we'll pull from Copper eventually, or was it the SUSE compute? What is it built? Open build thing.
I would prefer that we pull everything from the Fedora Copper and that we do the builds there, but we'll see how this goes.
Okay, very cool. But that sounds very promising. Once you have an update on that, could you ping me so we get awesome. Thank you very much.
Awesome, very cool. Any questions or feedback on that?
I'm just going to mention again, at the CentOS Dojo at DevConf US, we're going to have a bit of a presentation on SCOS and OKD and start socializing that. So if anybody's going to DevConf US, which is in August 8th, I think, Wednesday is the CentOS Dojo at DevConf US. I'll put the link to that in the notes.
All right. Let's move on now to documentation subgroup updates with Brian.
Okay, so from our meeting last Tuesday, so we're still waiting on a couple of updates from the CERN folks and also for the SNO update. Obviously, we don't have any instructions for SNO install on OKD at the minute with the assisted installer running locally. I have tried to play with that a few times and it doesn't work with Podman machine very, very well. So as I'm on a Mac. So yeah, we're waiting on those to come back. We had a conversation around there needs to be a better sort of front page experience to help people who find OKD to explain what it's about. So there is an effort about to start to look at that front page experience, what needs to be on there. And then also going into for different user groups, for just someone who wants to use it, install it, but then also, as Almiko mentioned, as people want to admin and begin to experiment with it, some more guidance on how people can troubleshoot and how they can start and get to understand a little bit more around there. So that is a project that we're about to start. We are still trying to move everything to our new OKD-project GitHub repo. It's a bit like herding cats, trying to get everyone lined up because we need to do the moves from the OpenShift. So we need the people that can actually transfer, and then we need to do all of the updates around the website because obviously we now host okd.io in GitHub pages. So we need to make sure that as we move the repos, the DNS entries are all updated as well. So that will happen when we get everyone lined up. That will happen, but yeah, we're still trying to do that. We are looking at the guide section. At the minute, there is, we're not really sure what that section is at the minute. There's a mix of people's home labs. There's a mix of some some help with what resources are needed in various environments. So we are looking to revamp that guide section. I'm going to take the lead on that to actually get that. Some of it will be moving to blogs, but then the question is, what do we want to do with that? So that's an ongoing project. And then I think the other thing that we've started looking at is, now that we're beginning to sort of get the community enabled a bit more, as Christian mentioned, we want to start looking at how we actually govern the community, how we're going to look after the OKD project repo as a community, and things like that. So what I've done is I've actually, if you go into that repo, you'll see that there is actually now a project in there. I'll just post that into the chat. So I started sort of experimenting with creating a board on there. And what we're looking to do is we're looking to repurpose the documentation working group. So that's the working group that meets every other Tuesday. This is the main working group where we actually sort of bring everything together. On the alternate Tuesday, the documentation work group meets, and we're going to repurpose that really to focus on managing the community and the GitHub projects, the boards, the pull requests, issues. So that working group is going to become more the community working group and will manage the community assets and moving things in the project. So I'm going through trying to create that process. Creating this task board was the first part of that. And what it'll also mean is, as people come into the community, they have somewhere they can go. They can look at where we need help, what sort of areas can they get involved in, depending on their skill set. And that's what we want to try and do. So as we mentioned, Amiko, if you create the videos, if someone's looking for a good first project, we could actually tag a task with transposing that into documentation and putting on the board with a flag of first good project or something like that. So I am looking for any input into how we want to do this, who should have access to sort of pull requests, do we want to adopt standard licensing, standard copyright across all our repos? Do we want to configure the repos to not allow direct commits and pushes to the main branch? All of these sort of things that we certainly have to start looking at now that we've got our own GitHub org. So we need to start defining all that. And as you can see, it's in the new column on the project board. So that will be moving across the board as we actually pull that in. And that'll all be written up on okd.io. So that's where all the process will be written and available for everyone to see and understand how it all works. And Jamie and I now have access to Twitter, so we can tweet. I'm going to start, once we get things around the community board, I'll start tweeting it there. As we open up, I still want to do a community event once we get the pipeline and the operators a little bit more established to try and get some participation there. So we'll start tweeting sort of community activity and events that are coming up. I think that's everything that we talked about.
On the Twitter side of things, Christian, you mentioned we have a 4.11 release. Should we be tweeting about it and sending out a note that it's there, or would you prefer that we wait until OCP comes? Does it matter to you?
It's not really that I'd like OCP to be there first. It's more like we have a known issue with the current, with that release. So I would rather wait until OCP comes out, because that means the issue has been resolved, and then we'll get a rebuild after that. Yeah, I'd rather wait. I wouldn't want anybody to upgrade now and be disappointed when they run this in a high. Yeah.
We will be tweeting for the 4.10 ones. Now that I got the credentials last week, so I'll be sure to tweet something out for all the 4.10 ones.
Just let us know. Let us know when you think it's safe to tweak 4.11.
Yeah, I don't think we'll actually get another 4.10 release now that we have started cutting 4.11.
Now that you've got the okay. All right.
So
once we have a 4.11 release, Vadim has said we can't do any prior releases.
Right, but does that include? But does that include ones that have blockers, or does it? Do you know what I mean? Like there is.
I think you'd probably have to pull it. There's something with his process. He says that he can't do it. So I don't know. You might want to reach out to him.
We only support. Oh, we don't actually support. We only have a single release at any one time. It's not like OCP where they have multiple streams of versions and they move support forward. We only have a single current across everything.
I do wish we had at least as, when there are like significant bugs, that there was a little bit of overlap, but I understand that it seems to be impossible. So, yeah.
So it's important to note that this isn't an upgrade blocker, so it's not going to lock you in, at least not as far as we know, even if you go through that version eventually. I'd like for the next release to still be tested, be upgradable from the latest 4.10 release. And I think we can still decide what upgrades to test. Usually we obviously go from N-1 to N, and this time we probably want to do both from the N-1, which is the 4.11 one now, and also N-2, which is the latest 4. I'll see what we can do about that. That is another thing that eventually in the second half of, or in the last quarter of this year, we want to also revisit once we have the CoreOS layering essentially merged into our code base, the support for that. We'd like to switch over to making the FCOS OKD MachineOS content image through layering instead of making a whole new RPMOS tree compose.
I think Vadim said 13.
That is when it's officially going to land, but support for fully going to land, which includes actually doing these layering builds within the cluster. That is something we don't actually require for switching over to that format. We just need support for consuming the new cluster, the new format in the machine config daemon, and that will land in 4.12 as is currently planned. So I don't think we're going to miss that because they're already pretty far along. Just that there's kind of two steps. First, be able to consume the new format, and then also be able to build the new or build your own derived images. That's what the feature is for on your cluster, which we don't actually need because we will be building those images on our built-in prompt.
Excellent. So let's move into any last thoughts here. There's an event. There's DevConf USA, DevConf US, and the CentOS Dojo on August 17th. Folks should note that. We've got our tasks. I had a quick question. Oh, go ahead. Someone say something. No? I had a quick question. Does anyone have any thoughts about how we might, I don't know what the timetable is for incorporating Gateway API into OCP. Is there a way that OKD could leverage itself as being ahead of the game in terms of Gateway API? And I'll provide a link for folks that don't know what we're talking about. So maybe Christian or someone else can chime in on this.
At least this is, while I haven't discussed this with anyone on the team yet, I do think this is the kind of experimentation work we want to enable, specifically with this new kind of being able to build your own payloads and things like that. Will hopefully enable exactly this. We have a couple of projects like this. I think Gateway API is one of the big ones we want to try as early as possible. Definitely. There's more with Cluster API, which is the team Mike is on. And those are the things I'm definitely looking forward to building experimental payloads for, so we can really get a very, very early testing of that. Currently, it's hard because we don't have the infrastructure to build these one-off payloads, but we are kind of using this this CentOS CoreOS MVP work now to build a pipeline that is agnostic and that can just be used to build the things with whatever content actually you want to pick. So really, yeah, I hope that is exactly what we're going to enable with that.
Excellent.
And yeah, Gateway API is super interesting.
Yeah, for folks that are watching at home that don't have access to the link right away, Gateway API is sort of the next generation of well, it builds around Ingress and provides even more functionality than the and it just went beta, I think last week or the week before, and real interesting stuff there. Does anyone have anything else before we end the meeting?
I just wanted to tack a comment onto the end of that discussion. And you know, I guess maybe this is like partially for the OKD community, but also partially for the Red Hatters who are here. I think we probably need to put some time into figuring out, like, if we can get these experimentations working in the OKD community, what does it look like to have a delta that we take back to Red Hat? Because, like, I'm very curious to see, like, if we could experiment in this community and we do things on the operators that are part of OpenShift, then, like, okay, there has to be a way for us to kind of formalize bringing that back into OpenShift, proposing it to OCP. And I think there's another way to go about this too, which is like through OLM and everything. So I think I'm very curious to see if people in the OKD community start to innovate things through the creation of new operators that we've never seen before. And that maybe starts to look a little bit more like in Fedora when a user brings a new RPM for a new type of, you know, functionality. So maybe there's some forging work we can do there. But anyways, a topic to continue talking about.
That's a very interesting question.
Yeah, I think that.
Kind of tangential to the operator effort, there's currently a very interesting enhancement. If you'd like to take a look at platform operators. So in the future, I think what OpenShift is going to do, it's going to be more modular, more optional operators, and you pick and choose your own kind of setup. Obviously, we currently still have a lot of operators in the core payload, but this is going to be slimmed over time, moving more and more to optional. And we have quite a few efforts going on with modularity and composability. Elmicro is very involved in that, and the certification tool is one of those outcomes as well.
So I was just going to put on the table. I'm booking space for KubeCon North America for the OpenShift Commons, and I've got a room that I can use for an OKD working group meeting or face-to-face social if people are coming. So I will let you know next week once the contract is signed. But I was thinking of doing something like in the morning hosting an operator framework kind of in this spare room meeting, and then an OKD working group meeting. And I will not be there because I'll be running around in the other room doing the commons things, but I think you guys can handle that. And then in the evening coming together for some sort of social thing and that would be the 25th, which is the not until October. So that's I'm working on that because I'm trying to get some space for a mini operator con as well.
Where's it going to be?
I mean, in beautiful downtown Detroit.
That's right. My and El Mico's home turf. So.
Yeah. So, they'll have to give us the tour of what is it?
This is a tongue in cheek, but do we get bulletproof vests too?
Yeah.
All right. You know what?
That's why it was tongue in cheek.
Chris Short wrote a really great response to people that say stuff like that. Detroit is a beautiful city. I'm going to show you guys the museum. Anyone that's there physically, there's a bunch of really great stuff in Detroit.
Oh, that's amazing. And I hear the barbecue is very good too.
All right. Thanks so much for your time, folks. Be sure to check the meeting notes and check the new board that Brian has, because that's where stuff's going to get put up now. Thanks to everyone for all your hard work, and we will talk to you next time.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.